Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well, and welcome to this Bitcoin update. In this video, I'm going to show you a dangerous Bitcoin pattern that could happen potentially quite soon. And I'm going to show you how to handle this pattern if it were to happen in the next few days. So, as you probably noticed by now, Bitcoin has been consolidating in a sideways range inside this triangular formation that you probably see here. So as we can see here, that's the top of this triangular formation, that trend line, and here's the bottom of this triangular formation. And Bitcoin has been coiling around this formation here, and it's quite likely that very soon Bitcoin could attempt, as you can see here, Bitcoin is approaching now the top of this triangular formation, and it's quite likely in the next few days, potentially over the weekend, Bitcoin may try to attempt to break out of this triangular formation. So I'm going to show you how we can prepare for this if this were to happen, because there's a dangerous pattern that happens and repeats itself over and over again when that happens. So let's just zoom in here and explain this point. You see, guys, what usually happens is this. Often when markets come very close to these kinds of triangular formations, these trend line patterns, what they usually do is they often break out. Okay, so they break above this triangular formation or indeed this trend line. And then a few days later or a week or so later, they usually fail and then drop back below them again. When that happens, the risk of a drop, further drop, lower, increases dramatically. By the way, this is called a false breakout pattern, and a false breakout to the upside is a very bearish signal. Let me give you some examples of this. I'm sure you want to see some examples. So here's Bitcoin last year in 2018. Notice that for a large portion of 2018, Bitcoin was coiling inside this, well, this triangular formation that you see here. As you can see there, going up and down, coiling here. And then what happens? As you can see, in July of last year, it broke out of this triangular formation. It broke above this trend line, as you can see here. And it is at this point we need to be extremely careful. Why? Because the great majority of breakouts from triangular formations or indeed from the top of the trend line pattern, they can often fail. And they usually result in dramatic drops, as you can see here. Notice that Bitcoin broke out and then a few days later, about a week or so later, dropped back below the trend line and then dropped all the way back to support. Let me show another example of this. This is Bitcoin back in 2016. Again, notice a very similar triangular formation happened here. This was actually a much more smaller triangular formation. But again, notice Bitcoin broke out of the formation here, tried to go up a little bit, and then boom, a few days later, dropped below it again and fell massively lower. Here's another beautiful example for you in 2017. Again, Bitcoin was coiling in this triangular formation here, broke out of the formation, broke above the trend line right here, but then a few days later fell back below the trend line and then fell much further lower. Here's an example for you on XRP this year. XRP broke out of the formation this year, tried to get something going to the upside, but again, eventually it failed. And by the way, we warned about this false breakout at the time it occurred as well. So guys, this means that as professionals, we need to be extremely careful, because if in the next few days or the next week or so, Bitcoin tries to break out of this formation, this triangular formation, especially if it breaks out of this trend line pattern, we need to be extremely aware that if Bitcoin fails to see more follow through, but instead a few days later or a week or so later drops back below the trend line, that is a very bearish signal. That's a dangerously risky pattern, and it usually results in failure and results in breakout from the downside of this triangular formation. So let me show you now how a professional trader would approach this kind of breakout patterns. You see, guys, for professional traders, it doesn't really matter whether the breakout fails or the breakout succeeds, because here's how professional will be thinking. So here's the example for you on Bitcoin last year in 2018. Let's say we had a similar situation here, and let's say Bitcoin did break out of this triangular formation or broke out from the top of this trend line pattern. Now, a professional trader might say, okay, fine, we have a breakout. We might consider buying a little bit here. So in this example, you as a professional trader might consider buying Bitcoin, a small amount of it, let's say, at the breakout. But there is a but coming. As soon as we see any signs of failure, as soon as we see any signs of a risky reversal, in other words, if Bitcoin were to fail to rally higher and instead a few days later or a week or so later fell back below the trend line, as you can see, it happened right there on that bar. It fell below the trend line here, fell back inside the triangular formation. That would be our exit. Essentially, at that point, the professional trader would say, that's it, that's my exit, I'm out. Or in the words of my favorite dragon from Dragon's Den, Duncan Bannatyne,
no, never. So I'm out.
Exactly. All right, guys, so that's one good example of how a professional trader would approach a false breakout situation. Let me show another example. Here's another example for you. So let's say a professional trader said, okay, we have a breakout from a triangular formation. We have a breakout from a trend line here, okay, or here. Now, I can assure you at that point, most amateur traders or most gamblers would be thinking, here we go. We have a breakout from a triangular formation. So therefore, Bitcoin definitely has to go to the moon. That is not how a professional trader would approach it. A professional would say, okay, we have a breakout from a pattern, from a trend line, but if I'm buying here, I'm going to look for any signs of failure, any signs of a reversal for me to get out. Why? To reduce the risk. So as soon as Bitcoin falls back below the trend line here or below the entry point, in other words, I'll be getting out. Why? Because the risk now has increased significantly to the downside. So what does this mean for Bitcoin at the moment? It means this. It's possible, and it's quite probable, that in the next few days or the next couple of weeks, Bitcoin may actually try to break out of this triangular formation. Again, as I mentioned, we don't know with 100% certainty whether the breakout is going to succeed and result in a rally higher, or instead is going to result in failure, like it has done many times before. I think personally, the balance of probabilities is towards the potential failure. I think very likely we could see a false breakout, a dangerous pattern in the next few days, the next few weeks. But here's the point. As I've just explained, it doesn't really matter whether we know in advance or not. Here's what we do know. If Bitcoin tries to break out of this triangular formation, and the top of the triangular formation is about 11,200, if it breaks out above that level, above this triangular formation and the trend line, we would be looking for any signs of potential failure, any signs of a reversal. In other words, if Bitcoin breaks out and then a few days later immediately reverses and falls back below that trend line inside the triangular formation, we would have no choice but to consider exiting the market. Why? Because the risk now has increased for potential failure and potential sell-off to the downside of this triangular formation. So, as I'm sure you know, there's a difference between how professionals and amateurs approach the market. Amateurs would be thinking like this, and I can assure you, as soon as Bitcoin breaks out of this triangular formation, there's going to be hundreds of articles, hundreds of YouTube videos. Oh, here we go. That's it. Bitcoin is definitely going to go higher, up to 20,000, 30,000, and so on. And then the moon boys come out. That is not how you as professionals would see the market. Professionals would be thinking, okay, Bitcoin has broken out, but what's my risk? My risk is this. If Bitcoin in the next few days reverses and goes back inside the trend line, inside the triangular formation, that's it. I'm getting out. Let me just say, personally for me, I am not particularly interested in buying Bitcoin at the breakout. Again, that's just my personal preference. I'm not particularly bullish on Bitcoin at present. I would be bullish on Bitcoin below 9,000. But for me at the present moment, in the words of Duncan Bannatyne, I'm out. Exactly. Before I finish the video, I just have a very small request, which is, firstly, if you haven't already subscribed to our videos, please make sure you do so now by clicking the subscribe button. But also, very importantly, please also click on the bell icon right next to the subscribe button. By clicking on the bell icon, this ensures that you're notified whenever we post a brand new video, because it is possible that some of our videos may not appear in your feed. So by clicking on the bell icon, this ensures that whenever we post a brand new video, you're notified so you don't miss a future video update. Thanks very much indeed, guys. I appreciate it, and bye for now.